Well, welcome back to another week of Staff Stories. Happy Friday, we made it. My name is Sarah. I get to be the Associate Director of Young Adults Ministries here at Calvary Community Church, and today I have the privilege of sitting down with Pastor Carolyn Taketa, who is the pastor of our Small Groups Ministries. And Carolyn, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for inviting me. This is so fun.
Yes, I know. We're just talking about the studio, and it's just like they made it so simple. So thank you to our tech team for setting everything up. But Carolyn, can you tell us a little bit, Small Groups Ministries, what's been going on? This has been a weird time.
Yeah.
What's happening with small groups right now?
I know, it has been a strange time, but God's been so good. Mm-hmm. So we've adjusted a lot.
Yes.
So way back now, seems like forever ago, but back in March, most of our groups just moved fairly smoothly for the most part, from meeting in person to meeting online, and adapted to what that modality requires. And actually a lot of them met more consistently. They shared more deeply. We had some really lovely surprises that we learned that were benefits of this season. And then a lot of groups took a break over the summer, but now we're back in full blast going and aligned with the fall teaching series, Hope for the Heavy Heart. So I think it's been a great season for people to really explore some of the difficult emotions that this pandemic has brought out in everyone. So it's been really great to kind of see God work through, and people have needed community more than ever.
Oh my
and
goodness,
so I think they're really investing in that place. And so if you're watching this and you do not have a few Christian friends to walk with you, especially during this hard season, then please let us know and join a group. We can help you find a community. So I just had to make that quick point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that actually leads into what I was going to ask. If someone wanted to find a small group, what is like the quickest way for them to do that, or just easiest manner?
Yeah, so you just go on our calvarywestlake.org website, and you can go to small groups, and there's a button there that says find the group, and you'll see a list. We've now moved all the open groups that have space online, so you can read through the descriptions. There's like 45, 47 groups.
Wow.
And you can read about it. And our young adult groups are on there too, because Sarah is on there, which is so great. So then you can just read just a couple sentences, see a little picture of the leader, and then you can email the leader directly just from that page, and then the leader will get back to you. So this way you get to pick the one that kind of, pray about it and see which one, the time works, the topic works, and what you might be interested in. And then if you have any issues at all, just call us or send an email to us. We're so easily accessible. Everywhere, but on calvarywestlake.org is probably easiest.
Awesome. Okay, so cool. And yes, our small groups have kicked off too in YA, and it's been really awesome, like you said, to see the response of people meeting and getting connected and getting to either be online, or some of our groups are meeting on campus, which has been such a huge blessing just to see faces and to share life in person. So thank you for working so diligently on that, because I think it could be a really easily missed opportunity. And I agree, for anyone who's thinking about it or just feeling like, man, I am struggling with loneliness, or I'm struggling with fill in the blank. That's what the church is for. That's what Christ's response and God's hope on the earth is. And we would really love to have you. So take Carolyn's advice. I'm behind you. And we're excited to see our small groups go this season. Yeah. So thank you. All right, so let's get to it. Our first question that we've been asking everyone, which I think has been really fun to hear the different responses, is looking at this season. If you can put 3 words to this COVID quarantine 2020 experience, what would they be and why?
Yeah, this is such an interesting question, because I like words, and I'm
yes,
like,
you
3
do.
words, Sarah, 3 words.
Yes,
really
I know.
limited.
Everyone's been giving me a hard time, but I'm like, I like a challenge. I know you do too.
And I didn't watch the other ones on purpose yet, because I didn't want to pick the same words, but I may have. I think the 3 words probably that rise to the top for me are disruption, frustration, and gratitude.
Wow. Okay, so let's start maybe with disruption. I mean, it seems a little obvious on the surface, but particular in your life, why was that something you would choose to describe?
Yes, so in the 15 years that I've been working in the small groups area here at Calvary, we've never had a season like this. We've never, we haven't really had groups online before. So to quickly move people, especially some of our older people, and even some younger people, just to kind of go from meeting person to person, all the warmth and the eye contact, the body language.
The snacks.
Yes, the food, exactly. All the stuff that we think about when we think about small group communities, just kind of poof, gone. And then go, okay, what could we put together and encourage our group towards that would still contain, what it means to be the church. And it has nothing to do with the location, but really what it means when our hearts are united. And so kind of the disruptiveness of looking at everything we're doing in ministry, including connecting. That's why we put, for the first time, our small groups online as well, so that people could choose, because we didn't see each other in the lobby. Normally, our small group connection, we have cards, we have lobby signs, we have snacks. We can't do any of that. And then even training. I put together some training things for small group leaders to use for new leaders, for ongoing leaders, stuff. We have other ones coming up, other topics, but there's another one we can't gather with our 150 leaders together like we did and enjoy a meal together and laugh and all of that, but doesn't mean that we don't do it. It's so important. So then try to figure out other ways to connect and equip and encourage our leaders, and to give them some tools for their own groups, because you can still text, you can still call, you can still do FaceTime. I mean, there's just lots of ways. So I felt like I had to learn technology really fast, figure out the best options, kind of educate myself. So it was a lot in the beginning. It was very disruptive in those ways. And so some of that came with frustration. Some of it was harder because I like to know what I'm doing. I like to have structure. A little bit similar on this way. And so you can't really plan when you don't know when it's going to end, and just kind of the ongoing uncertainty makes that much more difficult. So I think there was definitely times of frustration and impatience. And just discouragement and weariness of trying to have to make a plan, scrap it, and kind of doing it. But now we're month 7? So we got it.
By now we're like, all right, this is our MO for now.
Yes, this is our MO, exactly. Which then leads to gratitude. Because then along with it, we learned that there was just so much to be thankful for. Just even personally for my family, just to have, none of us have been affected personally by COVID, and we know so many have. And so just even for being thankful for health, being thankful that we have a house that is large enough that we aren't like on top of each other and can spread out, and that we have a Wi-Fi booster so we can all
that's a game changer, let me tell you.
That was really a game changer since the kids had to be in classes and all of that. So I think just there's a lot of things to be thankful for and grateful for, and to kind of recognize those opportunities, even in ministry. And that's what I was hearing from our small group leaders and people in groups, that this is easier for some of our people, like our groups with young kids. They said, this is easier. We're going to stay like this. We don't have to get childcare. We don't have to worry about a sick child. There's some gems mixed in with the challenges. It's
like when you're sifting through mud and you're like, oh, there's gold in here too. Wow, that's amazing. And
what do we want to put our eyes on? Do we want to, we can get discouraged looking at what we've lost, but we can be encouraged looking at what we have gained.
Absolutely. And I'm even thinking back to it had to be a little over a year ago when we were kind of piloting or testing online groups where we had staff members were hypothetically speaking, one day when we go online. So it's cool. I've had a lot of moments in this season to look back, even on the faithfulness of God, to be like, all right, I'm not going to scare you, but I'm going to equip you for what you can't see.
I had forgotten that, we did this pilot group, and then nobody really wanted an online group. And I was like, okay, we did that learning. But I tabled it, and man, that came in really handy because we learned some things already. God is so good.
God is so good and so kind, and I think that assures me even now the things that we can't see what's next.
Oh, for sure.
That He's equipping us towards, and I know that you'd even touched on that personal place, in your family of gratitude. I wanted to know, is there a personal place of growth that you've really been celebrating in this season?
Yeah, I think gratitude is definitely one. That's one I've been working on for a long time.
Same.
But one that I've been working on probably more in the last few years is I tend to be kind of more type A, more driven, a planner, executing things kind of more in that mode. And God's been really encouraging me in the last few years as part of my discipline to be still and to be in the moment, to be fully present. So where I am, what I'm doing in that moment, whether it's with my family, with with people in ministry, watching something, whatever it is, just to kind of be fully in the moment, not be rushing to the next thing. And so then this is something I've been kind of working on with Jesus over time. And then here we are, pandemic. And so then
your time to shine.
So then I was like, okay, I can't really do a lot of these other things. Therefore, okay, I guess we're really going to work on being fully present and not being rushed. There wasn't a place to rush to.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so it kind of created this space. You know how early on it felt like each day just rolled into the next and it was like kind of got all blurred.
It blurred when you can't leave your house.
Yes, and it was all so strange. And, and I think it started to really help me to kind of carve out those times and go, all I can do right now is to be on the Zoom call.
Yeah.
Okay, this is all I'm going to do. Yeah. And then I'm exhausted after that Zoom call. Okay, so I guess all I'm going to do right now is to just be exhausted. Like you kind of it gave me that space, or I took advantage of the fact that my life had gotten so focused and narrowed down. And that it made it easier in some ways to develop that discipline of being more fully present and being more flexible. Again, I'm a planner, so flexibility is harder for me. And adapting things and wanting to control things. So I think the Spirit really just trained me on that quite a bit. And I hope those lessons stay past this stage, because that's just so important for life. And I'm in my early 50s now, and I'm still learning how to be flexible. And I tell my daughters, you guys need to be flexible. This is what God's teaching us. And I'm like, if you get this now, then you don't have to learn it like 30 years from now.
Yeah, you start to work. I think of it almost as like muscles you haven't used before. You're discovering, and it's like we can work them, but once we work them, they have memory, and it's cool to think ahead that for yourself or your daughters. I also just love that you're someone who really does love to learn, and I think this season has had so many lessons presented. And it's up to us whether we want to take them and become a student of them. So thank you for sharing that. And like you said, things are becoming easier in some areas, but I know this time has been really difficult for everyone. It's just a huge disruption, like you said. So what would you say is an area that has been maybe especially disappointing or hard or challenging now?
Yeah, I think, each month that this has lasted, there's been different challenges. Again, I feel bad even saying what they are, because I know people have lost so much more and have been disrupted economically and their families and all that. For me personally, I think early on, my daughter was away in college in Boston, and those early days were so chaotic. And trying to get her home, and the whole airline stuff, and then just what was going on out there, and just a sense of panic. No one knew. She was an RA. She was exposed to all kinds of stuff. So there was just a lot of kind of like the uncertainty part was super challenging. And I think for my husband and I, we were both still working, and we could do a lot of that from home, so that was less disruptive. But I think on behalf of my kids, I'm such a mom, and we're recent empty nesters, and we're just getting used to it. And then the kids came back, which we loved having that extra time with them. But I think I just grieved for them. They lost a lot. They lost their kind of their routines, their plans for summer. My older daughter was going to have this grand adventure in Uganda and do all this incredible research with some biologists there, and it all got canceled. All of the different plans, and there were small things in the big scheme of stuff, but but it's sad. And so I grieved some of those losses. My daughter's now a senior in college, and there's all this cool stuff you get to do as a senior at her school. None of that's happening. So kind of the loss of that as well. And I think so there's been more of the kind of understanding that there's grieving. And I think early on I was kind of like poo-pooing it, kind of like, this is not big a deal,
You start to compare grief to other people's grief.
Exactly. We're not in the hospital. We're okay. We have 4 walls. We have all this, but at the same time, kind of over time, I realized you really can't be comparing people's losses. They're each valid in their own way. And so part of having compassion for others, just as Jesus has with us, is to sit with people in it. So I sat with my daughters in what they've lost, the friendships, the experiences, all the stuff. And when you allow yourself to experience it and you sit with people in it, they actually get over it faster. This is kind of this remarkable therapeutic thing that happens. And I think we'll hear more about that with this fall series. But the idea of, if you can name the emotion, you can actually manage it. And so I learned some parenting things along the way that I wish I had known when the kids were younger, when I wanted to just get over stuff. But now I'm much better in this stage of parenting. So I think just kind of feeling the losses for them has been much more challenging.
I appreciate you sharing that. And I think something you touched on that's so important is like, grief really is transition. It helps us transition, and it's not a formula, it's not a process that you rush, but it's really healthy to acknowledge our feelings. And I'm not a mom, but I have an older sister, and my sister was also a graduating senior in college. And I remember we did a at-home graduation party, which was so fun. But even just to know the things she was missing out on made me sad, because you care for these people. They are like your blood, or the people that you know in your life who are missing out. And I think there's something beautiful in community that helps us combat loneliness, that helps us kind of combat this heaviness of heart, to come together and say, can I just listen to you? Like,
exactly.
And that
actually, whatever empathy you get from your own situation. So, you know, my daughter's losses and my grieving them with her really helped me in ministry. Because a lot of our people were struggling through really hard stuff, and I learned this lesson a bit of just being with people in it. We can't fix it. We can't fix this pandemic other than to pray fervently for it to go away and for God to get rid of it. But just to be with people, I think doing more intercessory prayer during the season. As people are more burdened by it, and so you're a prayer warrior, so you get this. I think prayer is such a discipline, and
it is a discipline.
I have had more opportunities to pray with our leaders, pray with volunteers, kind of pray with our staff. I've been kind of one of our behavior goals that we have for this next gap year, as Pastor Sean has called it, is to really engage more deeply in prayer personally, for one another, for our country, for our community, and so I think we've taken that to heart. And a big piece of that is exactly what you're saying, is just listening so that you know what to pray, and allowing the Holy Spirit to tell you what to pray in that season, rather than just rushing ahead with what we think that they, you know, what they want.
Absolutely. And I love that, and love what you said. And in the stream of it being a discipline, I know we've talked about, each of our ministries praying, and I've been really challenged by that and our own prayer team in YA. So even like this morning, I've thought about you and this initiative because I woke up and we get these lists of prayer requests. I think it's really easy to let those things just become very, like, I don't know, robotic, or just
check off the box.
Exactly. But to take time before God, and I literally had to get out of my house and go on a walk and do it, but to understand that God is moving in this season, and that he desires to connect us, even to people we don't know. And for anyone listening, if you need prayer, want prayer, please comment, please get in touch with someone in our ministries. You can call Minister on call.
It's on our digital bulletin every week. There's a click button on there, or if you're watching online, you can do that in the chat, or you can just email info@calvarywestlake.org, and that'll take you right to the prayer thing. And we have 500 plus people that pray every week. For those prayer requests. And we've done other things too. Even for this fall series, we have a drop-in prayer on Sundays. Our staff team, we've got staff teams that pray over those lists together. It's because really it's kind of unseen, but gosh, we couldn't do this without Jesus.
Amen. Yes, it is really, it's that backroom time in the presence of God. And I think that leads really beautifully into the next question, which is, as you've been experiencing these things and learning, even just like rediscovering parts of the heart of God, what has stood out to you in your relationship with the Lord, or even attributes of God in this time?
And I love how you put that. Sorry, it's rediscovering the heart of God. I think that just really resonates with me. I think because of the way I'm wired, sometimes I kind of think of God as a taskmaster, and I'm a recovering legalist from my upbringing. So it's taken me decades to realize what grace really is, and like it's not something you can ever earn, but something that empowers us. And so I think what I've learned in this season more than others is, because it's been hard and it's been frustrating and it's been wearing, is that God is so kind. His heart is so kind, and he is patient and caring of us. And I think the times where I don't get through my checklist, and then I'm hard on myself because I should rise above it. I'm a pastor, I should be doing these things. That's the ugly voice in my head. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like, hey, I don't know why. It sounds like a little rough you up a little bit. It's like this rough voice. I don't know why. But that is not the voice of God. It's my voice. That is
to distinguish.
The self-critical voice in my head that's like, you're not doing enough. You should be doing more. And then the gentle voice of God that says to me, my grace is sufficient for you.
Amen.
And hey, right now, let's go for a walk.
Yes.
Let's go take a nap.
Yes.
Let's play with the dog.
Yeah.
Let's just sit with this one verse. You don't have to read, 3 chapters today.
Yeah.
Why just sit with this one verse and really think about what this means? It's been so interesting, like having the space to hear God more and having less that I can actually do, can make happen, has made me more open to hearing God's grace and realizing that God He's really kind.
Yeah.
And those aren't just like random words, but like the heart of God is for us, and it's so compassionate towards us. So if you're feeling like you're falling short of what you think God wants you to do or should do, all the shoulds never is really helpful. But to ask God, what is it you want me to do today? And some days, I think we focus so much in our culture of achievement and striving and thriving, and I do that as well. But in some of these days of this pandemic, I just heard the quiet whisper of God saying, "Today you just survive." Yeah. And that's enough. If you get through the day, your kids are fed, you haven't yelled at your husband, you haven't. You just try to be faithful with what's in front of you, and you try to love the person right in front of you. You don't have to climb any huge mountain. Yes. If you've taken a 20-minute walk, you don't have to go to the gym and do this whole long thing. Just kind of bite-sized. I think I've made my goals more bite-sized. Yeah. And instead of looking at that as a failure, I felt like God was affirming that and saying, I'm pleased. And that's enough. Some days surviving, some days just standing, just being still is more than enough, and He'll meet us there. That's the promise. Yeah, and I love that, and it's almost discovering that there really has been this bounty in front of us this whole time in the Lord, and it reminds me, and I always get this backwards, it's either 1st or 2nd Peter, but we're told that we're given everything we need for life and godliness, and I think that's just a cool reminder to say, like, okay, I have everything I need, so we can take it down and not be concerned of all the different boxes we didn't check in the day, and it actually realigns us in the identity we're meant to walk out in. So we do life more effectively. Like we're present with our kids, we're present with our families. We have this completely renewed vision. So I love that that's a practice that you've been kind of stepping into as you discover who God is. Exactly. Yeah, I don't think you can do that apart from. No. Because otherwise you're not being filled. So then you're going to keep having that voice in your head, or our culture, or whatever else telling you need to, do more. This is not to say you just sit around eating bonbons and watching Netflix nonstop. That is not the goal. Right. But to ask God, what is you have me do today? And it's so interesting. God's list of things for me each day is a lot smaller. That's most we have for ourselves or with other people. Exactly. Yeah. And it's mostly just like, walk with me, listen to me, abide in me, call that person, talk, think this through. Or leave it alone. Yeah. Trust me with that. Pray about that person. Like it's so much. It's very doable because it is sufficient, and He'll meet us in it. Yeah, that just reminds me of Kasuke Koyama, he's a Japanese theologian, but he talks about walking at the pace of love, and the concept that Jesus never ran anywhere. He was never in a hurry. If you look at Scripture, He walked. And the idea of that walking with the Lord, it's very counter to our Western culture, or even just culture on the planet today, but slowing down, but how that abundance comes from it, and just that overflow. More gets done, and they get done better. Yes, that's the incredible thing about the upside down kingdom that Jesus offers. Yes, absolutely. I love that. I'm gonna hang on to that. That was a good reminder. I guess with that, whether this is feeding into the next question, but are there any patterns or habits or rhythms that you would desire to take beyond this season, whenever the season is over? Yeah, this is such a good question. I think because we don't want to waste this season. And I think Brian Howard did the first message the first weekend, and I still remember him saying, don't waste this. Yes. And that's kind of been in the back of my mind as a theme, a backdrop for this season. And one of the things that I did early on that was not helpful was a lot of doom scrolling. So that's when you're on your phone, and I like to be informed. I like the terminology. Yes, so I would we didn't know anything about COVID-19, right? So I was reading all kinds of stuff. I went down all kinds of rabbit trails. I became a minor, in epidemiology studies. Reddit, you're what do the people say? Reading everything, everywhere, and getting overwhelmed. Yeah. and confused and just it just more and more chaotic. And so I started to stop taking in so much. I started to not grab my phone first thing in the morning, and not look at news till at least noon, and not look at it after dinner. I mean, I just to put some disciplines around it, because exactly, guardrails are a perfect way to put it. Because it was so easy to just go down and then be like 30 minutes, and now I'm really depressed because there's this thing going on in Europe and this thing going over in Asia that I have zero control over. And I remember a podcast that I was listening to where the person said the problem we're having in our spiritual lives is that we focus so much of our attention on things we have no control over.
Absolutely.
And we focus so little of our attention on things we do have control over. And so I thought, okay, what is a good discipline? So part of it was really around my phone, and just to kind of choose not to have that. And then once I kind of got that going, then I thought, you know what? Network TV, cable news from different places I'd watch from both sides. Not helpful this season at all for me. It's
quite a year.
It got me just amped up, and then you'd hear different sides of the same story. And I thought it's that there's just so much biases all over the place, and I was getting exhausted trying to sift through the facts and all of that, and it wasn't adding love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness into my life. Right. And so I stopped kind of watching cable news outlets, and I just read articles from trusted sources, and I have, I allow myself a certain amount of time to do that. I do that, with not right before bed and not first thing in the morning. I don't want that to be the first thing on my mind. So just kind of creating space where I don't have that noise, and controlling the noise that comes in. So I've been trying to focus on doing Philippians 4:8 and go, okay, whatever is true, whatever is right, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, whatever is excellent, praiseworthy, and whatever is good, like those things. And I go, okay, is reading, having now spent 30 minutes reading this article, did that really add anything to my life? Is it growing me to become more like Jesus? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It doesn't mean that everything I read is great either. I read a lot about how to redecorate your house, how to paint wood furniture, which I've been doing. It's so fun. I love seeing it made new. I think there's that satisfaction. So I paint old furniture, make it new. My husband prefers that way I don't go buy new stuff. But just finding things like that to kind of go, okay, using that as a constant grid for me of, was this, does this fit that list? Is this helping me move towards godliness? Is it not? And it's not to say, Sarah, that like I don't deal with anything unpleasant. Of course, I want to be aware and informed, and I take my responsibility to be aware and informed as a citizen very seriously. The race tensions, all of that, so heartbreaking. But even during that season, I had to kind of limit the diet of what I would see, because it was just, I just didn't want to get out of bed. It was so sad and tragic. And so you kind of have to go, okay, and know yourself, know what you can handle. Sometimes you can handle more. Once the kids went back to school, then I had a little more emotional energy than to carry some of the heavier emotional weight. But just kind of understand what your capability is. Some people can watch the news and not be impacted the way I was. So for me, kind of shutting down some of the noise. So then post-pandemic, in that glorious day, sometime we can be inside restaurants and worship together in our building. When that happens, I want to still keep that. I want to keep that discipline of monitoring what comes in. Back in the 80s, way before your time, way before, there used to be this thing, because computers were newer, there used to be this thing called garbage in, garbage out. And it was about if your code, because computers were if your code was bad, if one piece of it was bad, then what we would spit out was wrong. And so I think over time, when we allow the noise of the world and our whatever we consume to that's not really edifying to come in, you can't help but have that affect your mood, your perspective. So that doesn't mean I sit around and just listen to Christian stuff. I don't. I enjoy different different movies and different things. I partake of those things too. I just kind of have to mix it up and understand what impact it's having, and giving myself permission to not have to know everything about what's going on.
Absolutely, yes. And I think your approach is really beautiful, because you're recognizing that there's a lot of importance and value in the things that you are maybe tempted to spend all your time But when we really want to see, okay, well, what's the win? What's the why? What's the best outcome? Whether we're talking about like, okay, what is justice? Or like, what is wisdom? What is civility? To really say this is a marathon and not a sprint.
Exactly.
And I think sometimes there's so much media or even just voices we can listen to really understand how can I cultivate wisdom so that I can wake up tomorrow and say, I still care about this.
Right.
I'm not going to avoid this because it is important. And understanding, I think it's Stephen Covey talks about spheres of influence versus spheres of concern, where like, oh my gosh, like we can have concern for so many things because we have the heart of God. Like it's beautiful that your heart can break for something across the world, but then really understanding, okay, intercessory prayer, but maybe there isn't a practical thing I could do beyond that. So God, like, what's my sphere of influence? God, what can I do here? And knowing we're given different spheres of influence so that you don't burn out on a passionate, insight.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think what ends up happening, and I know I've done this, is sometimes we substitute information and that becomes our substitute for actual action.
Yes.
So we can feel empathetic and grieve over what's happening, the evil in the world or whatever, but if that doesn't move us towards action in our little sphere of influence, then it's not all that helpful. So I think, and it's a poor substitute. If learning about suffering other places doesn't lead us to want to alleviate suffering here where we can, then that's not super helpful either. So I think even just, I love to read, so I read a ton.
Me too, yes.
Yeah, it's easy just to kind of read and feel like, oh, I'm doing it, but I'm actually not, but I'm actually not doing anything. I just have now know a lot more about something, and it's not, even with the Bible, it's not how much you know, it's how much you actually live out. And so I think to limit to what I actually can do it without getting overwhelmed, and I think I can become overwhelmed, emotionally by stuff that's hard, and so I kind of protect and guard against it because I've been given a ministry and a calling, and I need to some extent understand my own capacity and what I've been stewarded with, at the same time have the concern, and hold that together at the same time. And that's just how I've done it. And I know other people could probably take in all kinds of info and be like, fine. I just found that it was not good for me, and it didn't lead me to healthy whole places.
Absolutely. And I think that's really relatable because I think a lot more people have been in that position of, okay, there's a lot of big things happening this year. There's the election. We've heard a lot about, racism and justice in our country and trying to work through those things and feeling like it's coming in more into our spheres, maybe if it wasn't before. But understanding, again, that we're called even in wisdom and scripture to set out for the good works that God has placed before us. And if we could do a few things really well, the bigger things that feel maybe overwhelming, there can actually be a more effective outcome if we're looking to the Lord and saying, okay, like you said, what can I do in my life? It may seem insignificant. It may seem like it's not even in the same vein as this bigger issue that you're thinking about, but knowing the Lord orchestrates those things, and man, following a life after Jesus brings justice, it brings peace, it brings everything I think we're desiring when we're looking for the answers in all these other voices.
Right. And an example of that is, when the racial tensions really heated up, and I just was overwhelmed by it and heartbroken by it, as I heard more and more stories, especially of Black friends, and thought, what do we do with this? We're in a predominantly white church. I'm a person of color, and I have my own experiences. However, there's this whole big issue here that's super messy, super polarizing. What are we going to do with this? And how do we honor God's heart for justice for all people? And what are we called as a church to do? And so while all this was swirling, and Pastor Sean preached on that, and then he recommended a book for our congregation to read that all the staff were given. Then out of that, actually, there was a piece we could do, which was to start one small group that I'm leading this fall on with Robbie, who's our middle school worship leader and YA worship leader, on the book Be the Bridge, and talking with these group of 20 people on what does it look like to have the heart of God for justice on this issue, and kind of walking through some of the complexity of it together, and then learning from one another, and then seeing down the road, 3 months from now when we're done with the group, okay, what's the next step, Lord? And I think God gives us those things, and having God kind of go, this is something, I'm a small groups pastor. This is something I can do.
Yeah.
And I have so much to learn about this issue. I just don't know. And so how do I do that? I gather people and talk with them, and then have a tool to kind of have those conversations and help people facilitate that conversation in a way that it's truthful and also has a lot of grace. That looks different because we're united around Jesus and not around these politics issues. So I think that's a little piece, and it helped me. I thought, okay, so I guess all the overwhelmed feelings and all the heartbreak over all that and feeling hopeless and helpless about it actually led me towards prayer and figuring out, what can I do, Lord? Is there something for me to do? And then initially there wasn't. It was kind of like, wait. And then it turned into, here's a few little things. And so I've been able to do a few things to help, and it's been so good because it's not me going, okay, I've got to drive this.
Right.
It's really kind of going, okay, what I can do, what I can't do.
Learn
my
next.
context.
Yes.
Our context.
Yes.
What we're working with here. What is it you want for us and for Calvary and for me personally and to grow? And so that's just been just one little example of, when you do get overwhelmed with kind of the bigger picture stuff, it's just so easy just to wring our hands and go, there's nothing we can do. But there is. And any place where Jesus is in you, through you, there's a place of peace, reconciliation. There's a place where you can always listen. So I think just finding, and it's just as valuable as doing, something really grand. It's like, it's the, Mother Teresa quote, right? The small things with great love. And that we can all do.
Yeah, amen. And I think just the theme of even what you've been talking about that I think is just a good takeaway for anyone listening is that it's a slowing down, like you said, and to just really come back into a place of sweetness and encounter with the Lord and invite God into the spaces that feel so overwhelming, or the spaces where you're like, wow, I used to have A, B, and C filling this, because a lot of us have all these extra gaps, it seems. But to really ask the Lord, okay, what do you want to do with me? And that's something you could take into whatever season, whatever iteration of next year is going to look like. But really even just tomorrow to say, okay, Lord, new mercies today. What would you have of me? So thank you for sharing that insight, Carolyn.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Is there anything else you'd want to add? Or
no, I think we'll get through this. It's, and I think when we look back, I want it to be a time that I kind of go back and go, wow, usually the times of chaos and challenges is usually when growth happens.
Amen,
I feel like there's really is no pain without, gain without pain, right? To some extent, I think we've been so upended that it is really an opportunity. I'm not just saying that in a Pollyanna sort of way, because I really don't like to suffer and I don't like chaos. So, but I do think that, the C.S. Lewis quote about God screaming and the God whisper, we hear it and through the megaphone of pain. I think there in the chaos, God wants to do a new thing. And that new thing is going to be something beautiful, and we don't know what it is. But we can be faithful each day with what He is giving us, and that is enough. And so, and it's enjoy the journey, I think, and the gratitude piece of just appreciating. I'm just glad that God invites me on the journey, and that this isn't gonna be a wasted time, but that there's some good stuff that's gonna come out of it for me, for our ministries, for our church. So thanks, Sarah, for the opportunity.
Oh my gosh, of course. And we look forward to having many more staff stories. So thank you for joining us, guys. We will see you next Friday.
All right.